Hi, everyone. This is Heather Hodges. I'm an organizational psychologist. Welcome to my show. This is the place where we say I'm in to creativity, bold thinking, transformational growth, and meaningful conversations. I'm so excited for today's podcast. Today's guest is Dr. Yoram Solomon, a leading expert on trust and its impact on business success. He's the author of 20 books, including his brand new release, The Trust Premium: How to Attract Loyal Customers Who Want to Pay More. Yoram is also the host of the Trust Show podcast, a TV host, and an adjunct professor of entrepreneurship at SMU. While his groundbreaking work focuses on trust, his original research explored creativity and innovation in teams, making him uniquely qualified to speak about the intersection of trust and creative success. Yoram, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Heather. Great to be with you.
In your bio, you said that your original research, and I know this about you because I've actually gone to your DOI for your PhD dissertation and looked at your creativity and innovation study. So your original work was in creativity and innovation, and now you've made this transition into trust. How did we get here?
So first of all, you said that in my bio, I said that. It's actually ChatGPT said that. I asked ChatGPT, how would you introduce me if you ran a podcast on creativity? How would you introduce me? And ChatGPT said, this is how.
So, I love that. When we think about creativity, now we really have to think about creativity and AI and how do we work together. That's fantastic.
You know, and it's a great point you bring up because my last TED Talk, my third TED Talk, was about trusting students with ChatGPT. Because if you think about the what's it called, the Bloom's taxonomy, that pyramid of cognitive thought, and at the bottom you have just knowledge. You know, you tell me something, now I know it, and that's it. Then above it is comprehension and so on. At the top, in 2001, they changed Bloom's taxonomy. At the top, now you have creativity. And the thing is, ChatGPT is a little limited up there in creativity. I mean, it can create different things, but it's not really creativity because it's doing it based on large language models and based on researching what's available as opposed to really come up with new things. So I think that artificial intelligence would allow us to be more creative and focus on creativity and let ChatGPT do the things at the bottom. But that wasn't your question.
It wasn't my question, but that's a great little segue. I love that. But yeah, you're right. Creativity is the pinnacle of learning, being able to turn it back around and then being able to create something new, which, you know, ChatGPT can do basically, but we're missing authenticity and the emotionality and the humanness of when we involve AI and creativity.
And what we may gain is plagiarism, but that's beside the point. But you asked me a question. You asked me about how do you get from creativity
how did we get
to
from
trust?
creativity and innovation to trust? Talk
So
me through that.
we talked before. Yeah, and you know that my research question when I worked on my dissertation, which it would now be almost 17 years ago, the question was, why are people so much more creative when they work in small startup companies than when they work in large mature companies? Because that really bothered me because I did work in both environments. I did start startup companies, several. I sold one. I bought one. But at the time I was working on my research, I was working for a company with 35,000 employees, Fortune 200, and I did not feel the creativity there. And so I tried to understand why. And so I got in and realized that really the creativity comes from could come from your DNA. You know, you may be born creative or less creative. It comes through the experiences that you had from the day you were born until today. So how you were brought up, where you were brought up, where did you go to school, and so on. It comes from actions that you take. But it also comes from your environment, the environment you're in. And is it an environment, and specifically the organizational environment, is it an environment that fosters creativity? that rewards creativity as opposed to punishes people for that. So what I realized is that that's probably where the issue is. That's probably where the difference is. And I went on and I did a 2-year research to try and understand it. Well, after I was done with that research, I kind of built this model of what's a creative culture or a culture conducive for innovation and creativity. And what I found was that it has two dimensions. It has the vertical and the horizontal dimension. The vertical are things that happen between a leader and a follower, up or down. And the horizontal is things that happen within a team, the team dynamics. And I decided at that point, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to help companies build a culture of innovation. And I went to, and I started doing workshops and other things with companies to help them build that culture of innovation and creativity. And one day I interviewed a company, and this was their chief HR officer and the chief technology officer. And every question I asked about those components of that culture of creativity, everything I asked them was negative. I mean, it was all bad, and it, the researcher in me starts coming up to the surface, and I start asking why, and I try to understand. And the more I try to understand, the more I come down to leaders don't trust their employees. Why do they not trust their employees? We don't trust them. And I thought that was interesting. And by the way, I then did a survey and I asked, what's the most important quality for you in other people? I asked about 6 types of people. Out of 6 types, 5 of them said the most important quality for me in the other person is their trustworthiness, except leaders. Leaders didn't care about employee trustworthiness. They only cared about employees' willingness to work hard. So I realized that that's an issue. And then why can't people have really what I call a constructive disagreement in the organization? And the answer was, once again, they don't trust each other enough to be vulnerable, to give the feedback that the other person needs to hear, not what I think they want to hear, and be receptive to feedback. And it all came down to trust. And I went back to my PhD research and I opened the conceptual framework diagram, the one that takes a full page. And I'm looking at it, and there's this box there in a very thick outline. And it has one word inside. It says trust. And I realized that in my research, I researched everything except that box. I accepted the fact that that box is the foundation for those components. I just didn't go deep to try and understand the differences in trust between the different types of organizations. So I found the differences in the other components, just not why the trust. That's when I started digging into trust.
And so that was the switch for you. Was going back to
that was the switch. And I at that point I started doing so now we're talking quite a few years back, because while the research I did, the original research was 2008 through 2010, that realization that trust is the foundation happened in 2017, and that meeting with the company was in 2017. That survey I was talking about happened in 2017. And so I started realizing the trust is very important here, and that I'm in a fork in the road. Up until that point, everything I did was around innovation, creativity and innovation. And it's been quite a few years that I've been around creativity and innovation. And all of a sudden, there's this thing called trust that I started researching. And I didn't know, do I stay with innovation or do I switch to trust? So I asked 20 of my closest friends and family members, what do you think I should do? Should I stick with innovation, keep going in innovation, or switch to trust? 19 out of 20 said, stick with innovation. So I switched to trust.
naturally.
Naturally, obviously, yes. If you know me, that would be natural.
That sounds just exactly like you, Yoram. Like 19 out of 20 say go this way. Where does Yoram go? That way. But you see,
the road
less traveled. So trust is from your research, and it sounds like you started a long time ago, 2008 to 2010, and then 2017 was when you had that realization about trust. But it sounds like what I hear you saying is, from your research and what you've experienced since then, that trust is either a catalyst or an inhibitor to creativity on teams and in organizations?
So distrust is an inhibitor. Trust is a supporter. It's trust. When you have trust. So here are a few of the things that that came from this was research that I've done at about 2018. And I started researching within organizations, different types of organizations, and one of the things I did was I asked that the question, think about an employee or boss or whatever the relationship was in that study. Think about that other person. So let's take peer, just for sake of argument's sake. So we're going to go with the horizontal dimension. Think about another peer, and think about one that you can trust. Now that you have that person in mind, I started asking questions about how comfortable are you to be vulnerable with them? How comfortable are you to deliver feedback? And how comfortable are you to get feedback from them and know that they care about you? And you know, there's a list of, I think, 12 items under that question. Then I said, I want you to think about a peer that you don't trust and answer exactly the same question. So now it starts giving me the difference or how trust affects different things. Well, so if you trust someone, a peer, you are 240% more likely to be willing to be vulnerable with them. What does it mean? It means you're going to ask stupid questions. You're going to suggest stupid ideas. You're not going to worry about, you know, later you go down the hallway and somebody says, I heard you ask the stupidest question in that meeting. You don't have to worry about that. 106% more likely, more willing to give the other person the feedback that they need to hear rather than the feedback you think they want to hear, which you know how critical that is for creativity. 106% more if you trust them. And but by the way, when I say trust them versus distrust them, I only talk about the top quartile versus the bottom quartile. I'm not talking about the absolute top and the absolute bottom. I'm talking about quartiles. So only 50%, move 50% up, and the level of willingness to give feedback goes 106%, doubles. Your willingness to accept, to be receptive to feedback from the other person and not worry that, you know, they have a hidden agenda or something, that goes up 76%. Those are all the components that would affect trust, that would affect creativity, and they're affected by trust. One of the things that I did was I asked, how comfortable are you in holding a constructive disagreement? And I explained what a constructive disagreement is. And by the way, there are two other alternatives to constructive disagreement. On one hand, you have the destructive disagreement. This is where everything is emotional and personal, and you attack the person as opposed to an idea. Then the flip side is the what I call the politically correct disagreement. You know, that's when you have the meeting before the meeting after the meeting, just not the meeting during the meeting.
I've been in those.
And so, yeah, I know. And so, how willing are you to hold, or how comfortable are you in holding constructive disagreement? And I gave 5 options. You know, 2 of them were, or 3 of them were pretty bad. It's, I don't feel comfortable. I try to avoid disagreement. Disagreements are not productive. If the level of trust was low, the probability of choosing one of those three negatives, I try to avoid disagreements altogether, I don't feel productive, I don't feel comfortable doing it, the probability of choosing those was 10 times higher than if the level of trust was high.
Powerful. Oh my gosh. So backing up just a little bit, Yoram, when we think about trust, I've heard a lot of different definitions of it. How do you define trust?
Ooh, I'm glad you asked. Wait, let me open my book and I'll check because it's a long definition. Actually, you know, let me start by telling you why trust is
Okay.
important. Why do we need trust? And that would lead to how do I define trust, therefore. So, no risk, no reward, right? We all know that. You're not going to get a reward if you're not willing to take risk. Well, what if you want a certain reward that requires a certain risk that goes below, or I should say above, your risk tolerance level? You're not willing to accept that risk. Well, but I still want that reward, but I'm not willing to accept the risk. Well, the way to bridge between the level of risk that's required to get a certain reward And my risk tolerance level, the way you bridge that is by trusting. Now, we can talk about trusting yourself, we can talk about trusting God, and we can talk about trusting people. Now, when we talk about people, there are two types of people. Those you can trust and those you can't. No, there are two types of people. Those that you know. So, for example, Heather, I know you, you know me. So my trust in you is a very specific trust that's aimed at you. But when I get into my car and I drive, I trust a lot of people that I don't know. The people who designed the car, who built the car, who maintained the car, the people who, did not mix water in my gas and so on. So I trust a lot of people that I don't even know. So, but that's besides the point. So we need trust to bridge between the level of risk that we need to take to achieve a certain reward and our risk tolerance level. And different people have different risk tolerance levels. I was talking the other day to a friend of mine who's was an Olympic slope skier, and his risk tolerance to skiing is way, way, way higher than mine. He's willing to accept way more risk. So to do certain things, he doesn't need to trust anyone. I do. Okay, so that's why we need trust. Now the question is, what is trust? What is the definition of trust? So to me, trust is your willingness to accept the possible negative consequences of giving control over something you have to another person, expecting them to minimize those negative consequences. Let me break it down.
That's a long definition, Yoram. Break that down.
Hey, that's why I got the PhD. That's I can't do like a 3-word thing. I actually, I'll be serious, and I read pretty much every single definition of the word trust. The dictionary definitions. They're just the joke, right? So I'm talking about research. I'm talking about people who wrote about trust, not decades ago, but centuries ago. And I started combining them. That transition that I made into trust was not something that I just, one morning I got up and I said, what's trust? I think I'm going to pursue trust. No, it took a long time of reading and researching and thinking and talking to people and interviewing people and doing surveys until I got to where I was when I published the Book of Trust. By the way, I should show you.
Because it's hot off the press, isn't it?
Oh, not this one. This is actually the Book of Trust. This, by the way, is the biggest book ever written about trust. It's 550 pages.
Monumental.
But there's a smaller version of it, the
mini
book
book of trust.
Yeah. But this is the hot off the press, the Trust Premium.
It's pretty.
Yes.
I love the cover.
So, and it's consistent with the other one. By the way, consistency is something that builds trust. So the fact that those books are consistent does build trust in my work. Anyway, so it is in the Book of Trust, I analyzed how I reached the definition of trust. So let me break it down. So in order for me to trust someone, or the way that I trust someone is I actually give control over something I have. What is that thing that I have? The easiest one to describe is money. When I talk about in the Trust Premium book, this new book, what I talk about is really hiring someone to do something. And typically, not always, the negative consequences are going to be loss of money. So let's talk about an investment banker or an investment advisor. So what's the worst thing that can happen if I give my money to an investment banker? The worst thing that can happen is that I lose that money, right? Actually, there's a possibility of losing more than the money that I gave them if they, start
extorting you or something.
What would they call opening margin accounts and things like that, where all of a sudden I'm on the hook for money that I didn't have and I didn't give. But let's simplify things. So I want to hire you, Heather, to, you're a speaker, so I'm going to hire you to deliver a keynote speaker. What I'm giving you control over something I
Mm-hmm.
have. The thing that I have is really my
Mm-hmm.
career, the amount of money that I put into it, maybe my
Mm-hmm.
ego, because I'm giving you control. The moment you go on stage there, or the moment we signed the contract, the moment I told my members that you're going to be the one coming to speak, those are the things that I put in line. I gave you control over it. Now it's up to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's how you deliver your keynote. It's in your
Mm-hmm.
hand. I gave you control. What are the negative consequences? I already mentioned that could be to my career. It could be
Mm-hmm.
money. It could be I can lose my
Mm-hmm.
job, and maybe nobody's will ever hire me as an event planner or things like that. Those are the negative consequences. So I'm giving you control, willing to take those negative consequences, expecting you, and it's important to emphasize that I'm expecting you to minimize those negative consequences. So that means that I need to make sure that you know what those consequences are
Mm-hmm.
and you have the ability to
Mm-hmm.
minimize them. I'm sorry, the ability and the
Right.
intention
Yeah.
to minimize them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my definition. That's how I got. And right after I got, and as you can imagine, over time, I developed more and more and more, or it evolved over time. But over time, I also looked at different relationships where trust is required, and I asked myself, what are the different components in every relationship? Every single relationship, trusting relationship, has those
Mm-hmm.
components.
It does. So it's I love that imagery of the bridge, that trust is the bridge between the risk and the risk tolerance levels. That's,
Yep.
oh gosh, of course,
The
visuals. I
required
love the
risk for a
visuals.
required. Yeah. Yeah. That's we're alike in that. We both like
Oh,
visuals.
great, great. Well, I'm curious if we break it down where for leaders in particular, because a lot of people that are listening to this podcast are listening to it in hopes of growing their leadership. They are intentional about their own development. What could maybe a young aspiring leader and maybe a more experienced leader do to establish trust with the people that they lead?
Well, obviously, the first thing is they need to read the Book of Trust. And,
Naturally.
naturally, uh, but what can they do? So, I actually developed a 7-step
Okay.
process on how you become more trustworthy. Here is the there are 3 things that are really really critical to understand trust, and they're fundamental to trust. One of them is
Mm.
relativity. You have to understand that things are relative. What does it mean? Uh, Heather, I don't think that I ever asked you, but are you a procrastinator or not?
No, I tend to get things done quickly. And
Okay, so let's say
are you a
I'm actually a
procrastinator? Okay.
procrastinator.
Yeah.
I wait for the last minute. I tell people sometimes when I go on stage, the last changes I made to this presentations were 20 minutes before I got on stage. And my computer was running on battery when I was making those changes. So but you know what? Then I deliver the best. I deliver the best. I'm not worried about that. So you and I working on the same team, I will not have an issue trusting you because you're going to finish your part of the job, the joint project
A
early
month
on. So
early.
why would I have an issue? I'm going to drive you crazy. You are not going to trust me. You're not going to trust me because you know that I'm going to wait for the last minute. And you know that the quality is not going to be good, which is not true. You know that you're going to have to fix what I did, which is
Mm.
not true, but doesn't matter. That's your perception. So bottom line is that the same behavior that would cause one person to trust me could cause another person to distrust me. The same behavior, being a risk taker or not being a risk
Mm-hmm.
taker, being a procrastinator or not being a procrastinator, and different things. So the first thing that we have to that every leader like that needs to keep in mind is that things are relative. Trust is personal. Over the years, I observed 8 laws of trust, and that's actually the first one is that trust is continuous. It's not a I trust I don't trust.
Mm.
There are different
Mm-hmm.
levels. The second is it's contextual. The third one is it's personal. So it's relative. We have to keep in mind that there is no one silver bullet. I know we live in a world today where everything we look for is a silver bullet. So what's the silver bullet? There is no silver bullet. You have to assess the other person that you want to be trusted by. The second component is nuance. We like to generalize things. I remember once reading, and I'm not going to say who it was, but posted something on LinkedIn. That's somebody pretty famous with a lot of following. He posted something that said, "Together is better." And I'm like, seriously? That's all you have? I mean, not everything applies to every situation, to every circumstance. So we have to keep in mind that things are nuanced. The third thing to keep in mind is empathy. Empathy is not compassion, is not sympathy, it's not pity. Empathy is your ability to see things from the other person's perspective as if you were them. You're a new leader, you want to be trusted by people, you have to be able to see things from their perspective as if you're them, because you're not them. And you have to always keep that in mind. They may worry about different things than you are. You're familiar with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm a leader. I'm making so much money right now that I worry about my self-actualization. My employee may be worried about paying rent. I need to be able to put myself in their situation. The last component is no BS. It boggles my mind how people think that they can BS their way into everything and not realize the other person can read through it. Stop BS. Say what you mean what you say. Don't be mean when you say it. But really be straight. So those are kind of the fundamentals, the foundations. Above that, I developed this process, which I mentioned. I call it the trust habits. It's a 7-step process. I even branded it and trademarked it. And the first step there is ask yourself, who do you want to be trusted by? The second step is, what are you doing wrong right now in this relationship? What are you doing that's holding you back from being more trusted in that relationship? Third step is, what should I do to fix it? So now you're thinking about a new habit. And I'm not going to go through all the steps and go through detail, but the bottom line of this is, if you want to be trusted, and it's actually more than you being trusted if you're in an organization, you have to form new habits that change old behaviors, build trust, and transform the organization. So it's all about forming new habits.
So questions that a leader might ask themselves that you just gave us are, who do I want to be trusted by? So a leader, like either a new leader, an experienced leader, like who do I need to establish trust with? Who do I need to be trusted by? What am I doing wrong? Like what could I be doing differently to improve the situation, I suppose? And then what do I need to do to fix it?
Yeah. So it's not the what. Well, it's what am I doing wrong that holds me back from being trusted? Because I may be doing several things wrong. And by the way, the reason for that, you probably are familiar with that. People are, I'm not going to throw a number, I'll throw a number in a minute. People are much more likely to post a negative review if they had a negative experience than to post a positive review than if they had a positive experience, right? It's always, there's actually a lot of research behind it, including research that awarded its authors the Nobel Prize for Economics in 2002. So we are a lot more influenced by negative than by positive. And what that means is that you may be doing a lot of good things and you may be thinking, Heather, I want to be more trusted by you, so maybe I should do this positive thing and maybe this positive thing. The impact I'm going to have by eliminating one negative thing, because you're responding so much stronger to negative things that I do, the impact I will achieve by eliminating that one negative thing is going to be give or take 2.9013 more impact than if I added one positive thing. Now, where did I get this number from? That number was contested in research, so it might not be the right number. This is the number that's called the critical positivity ratio, or the Losada ratio. And it was created by Fredrickson and Losada. I don't remember the year. But if you Google the number 2.9013, that's what's going to come up. And, you're going to find articles that challenge this number. But at least in the Book of Trust, I covered quite some research that was done to show that bad is much stronger than good. So that second step is really critical. Don't think about what can I do better. Think about what do I need to stop doing bad.
How do I get out of my own way?
Yeah, because I am right now in my own way, yes.
Stop doing something bad. Now, those
Yeah.
are great questions, especially for leaders. I teach and coach that you can coach yourself, and these are fantastic coaching questions for someone who's trying to establish trust with the people that they lead. That's great. 2.9013. Can't we just say almost 3%, Yoram?
Not percent. This is times.
So
Three
nearly
times.
nearly three times. Can't we just say nearly three times, Yoram?
No, because then I will not be able to say 2.9013.
Okay. No, that's great. So nearly 2.9013 times. More trust.
No, it's exactly 2.9013. It's nearly 3. No, don't take this number necessarily. First, because even in that research, they came up with a range. And the second thing, that research was subject to some criticism on how they came up with numbers. So I stick to bad is much stronger than good. We react. The person we want to be trusted by responds so much stronger to what I'm doing right now that's bad than what I'm gonna do that's good. So eliminate bad.
Well, that was actually going to be one of my next questions for you. Maybe you just answered it. That if you could boil it down for leaders and help them do that self-assessment of, am I trustworthy? How do I get out of my own way? What do I need to do? What do I need to stop doing? What advice would you give leaders to be more trusting and to extend trust more?
Okay, that's the flip side. That's the opposite side. So how do I extend trust? How do I learn to extend trust? Well, that brings an interesting point, and this is trust law number 6. Trust law number 6 is that trust is reciprocal. Now, beware. When I say reciprocal, the first thing that comes to mind is I trust you, therefore you trust me. Not true. Because the level of trust that I have in you, Heather, is the product of your trustworthiness in my eyes and my trustfulness, my willingness to trust people. I have a problem. I have trouble trusting people.
You have trust issues,
because
Yoram?
of things that
Trust issues?
I have trust issues. Yeah.
Same.
Sometimes when people ask me what do you do, I don't go I'm a public speaker, I am a trust researcher. I just tell them I look down and I go, I'm dealing with trust issues. But everybody's dealing with trust issues, and I have issues trusting people. Oh, by the way, when somebody says, how can you not trust other people? I mean, you're the trust expert, and I tell them that's why, because I know that why I can't trust them. But so the level of trust that I have in you is the product of your trustworthiness and my trustfulness. The level of trust that you have in me, Heather, is the product of my trustworthiness and your trustfulness, for completely independent variables. So the level of trust I have in you and the level of trust you have in me are completely independent. So it's not reciprocal in that way. And it's not reciprocal in that if I'm trustworthy, therefore you will trust me, because you already know that there's another component, and that's your trustfulness. Here's what I want you to think about. If you know what, I'm going to tell you a short story that will illustrate it. When my daughter, Maya, my older daughter, when she was about a year old, that's when she lifted herself from the floor, and instead of crawling, she started standing. Now, after she managed to stand and, didn't he have to hold something, the next thing she tried doing is she tried walking. After she mastered walking, what do you think the next thing she did was?
Running.
Running. She tried running. And what do you think happened the first time she tried
She
running?
fell.
She fell down. And what's the first thing that she did when she fell down?
Got back up.
No, she didn't.
Oh, she stayed down.
Stay down. No, the first thing that she did was she turned around and she looked at me. And if my behavior would have been, she would start crying, obviously, because something terrible had happened. But if my reaction would have been, get up, keep going, she would get up and go, because based on my reaction, nothing serious has happened. Trust works that way too. See, if I trust you and I show you that I trust you, you will behave in a more trustworthy way. The opposite is true too. If I distrust you and I show you that I don't trust you, or even if I trust you, but I just don't show you that I trust you, so you don't know that I trust you, you will not behave in a trustworthy way. So the first thing for a leader to know about extending trust to their employees is keep in mind that my behavior, the level of trust that I extend towards my employees, will affect their trustworthiness. That's the first. Now, I'm not the advocate of blind trust. I'm going to trust you 100% with everything. Remember, I'm going to give you control over things that's, hey, here, I'll let you fly my F-18. No, I'm not going to let you fly my F-18 because I don't know if you know how to fly it. But I will always be slightly ahead. The level of trust I extend to you will always be slightly ahead of the level of trust that I feel that you earned with me. Because as long as I'm slightly ahead of you in how much I trust you, your trustworthiness is going to grow and grow. I'm going to avoid doing the opposite. So the first thing that a leader needs to realize is that the level of trust that you extend and demonstrate, not just extend, it's not enough that you know that, it's important that they know that, the level of trust that you extend to them will affect their trustworthiness. So you need to keep that in mind. The second thing is, once you understand what are the 6 components of trustworthiness, and you can look at your employee and say, you know, I can analyze your competence, I can analyze shared values, I can analyze certain things, you can change things on your side, or you can share with the employee, look, Heather, I don't trust you as much as I could and as much as I want to. Here is why. I'm giving you the framework to be able to pinpoint to this thing. And you'll be amazed on what those things are. I'll give you an example. Back in, I worked for that very large company, and my boss, you know, let me ask you a question first. If I need to convince you of something, what do you want to get from me first? The bottom line, here's what I'm trying to convince you, and then give you the background to why, the support to why I'm asking that. Or would you like me to take you through the thought process and only at the end say, and therefore, this is what I'm asking, or this is what I'm proposing?
Yeah.
Which one
For
do you
me,
prefer?
I prefer the bottom
first one.
line and then show me the data or the case studies.
72% are like you and me in that respect. So I'm having a meeting with my boss, I'm proposing something, and I can tell on her face that she has developed an immediate allergic reaction to what I was proposing. And I take her through the rationale and everything, and it doesn't work. And it takes another week until finally I can convince her, and I didn't change anything. One time, I was really frustrated, and I just said, you know, I really need to understand. I'm trying to convince you, and I feel every time that you're getting this immediate allergic reaction. I like when somebody's trying to convince me with something, because I was running 89 people at that time. When somebody's trying to convince me with something, I like them to give me the bottom line first, because it gives me context, and then explain why and give me the rationale. There's the other alternative, which is take me through the thought process, and at the end, which one are you? And she said, I'm the second one. And it hit me. Every time I start with the bottom line, she gets the allergic reaction. I can't start with the bottom line. Now, one, I understand it. Two, can I change it? And the bottom line is it's not that hard. Every time I go to talk to her, to Julie, I will have to not, I know that it's natural to start with the bottom line, not start with the bottom line, start with the story, and at the end get to the bottom line. Things went so much better. She trusted me so much more. So back to your question, Heather. As a new leading leader or growing, emerging leader, the first thing I need to know is realize that the level of trust that I have and demonstrate in the employee affects their trustworthiness. The second thing is that if I don't tell them what is it that's holding me back from trusting them more, what is it about them, and maybe it's something about me that I can change that's not too hard to change, then we can do something with it. But without that type of communication, I'm not going to trust you more because of that one component that you don't even know.
What? Okay, let me ask you this, Yoram. What if somebody totally
Yes.
screws up and breaks trust? How do they get it back? Especially a leader. Let's say a leader is the one who has gotten in their own way. They have broken trust with the people that they lead, or maybe with their supervisor, their boss. What do they do? How do they get out of that?
They move to another country.
Exit
Okay.
visa.
Yes. So, great question. Here's what you do. The first thing is you own it. You don't throw it on somebody else. You don't point to somebody else. And by the way, I take full responsibility. Can I say the word stupid on your podcast? Well,
You just
that train has left the station. Yeah. One of the stupidest things that I hear is I take full responsibility, because you don't know what it means to take full responsibility. I take full responsibility, so I'm going to quit my position as the CEO. I'm going to take the $50 million severance package that I'm receiving. I'm going to go on my book tour now next, while 20% of our workforce lost their livelihood and only got 3 weeks pay time. Okay, that's not I took full responsibility. That statement is way, way overused. When I say own it, I really mean own it. So I own, here's what happened. That's on me. That's number one. Number two is, Heather, what can I do to fix it? What can I do to have you trust me again? By doing that, you're doing two things. One is you're showing the intention to do it. Two is you're really trying to understand, what is it that I did, or how do I fix it? Hopefully they're going to tell you. If they're not going to tell you, others will tell you. If others will not tell you, analyze it yourself. Try to understand what you did wrong. You know, we're going back to what you did wrong, obviously. Then you make a promise. I'm going to fix it. They're not going to trust you immediately after you made that promise. It's going to take time. Over time, with you being consistent, remember, I'm going back to trust habits, form new habits. It's not just I'm making a commitment, I'm forming a new habit. Over time, they're going to realize that you have changed, that you have fixed it. And number four, whatever you do, don't screw up again. Consider yourself being on probation.
Stop digging the hole.
Even though you're the leader.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So owning it. I mean, that's so big. Like, and you say, don't throw blame, don't cast it off on somebody else. You own that. You're not taking full responsibility. As you said, that's an over.
No,
you're
are
taking
taking
full
full
responsibility.
You're not
going to
saying
say
I
it,
take
but
full
you're going to own it. You're going to take it, and then the next thing is ask them,
Yep.
what can I do? And you're communicating to the people. I know I've broken your trust. I want to earn it back. What can I do to earn your trust back? And then take action, and then be consistent. And then we need time and space and consistency from there.
Yeah. And whatever you do, do not screw up again.
Yeah, stop digging the hole.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, oh my gosh, Yoram, this has been a fantastic conversation. And before I let you go, I have a research assistant that has a question for you. So, Percy the penguin. Percy, are you there? Do you have that question for Yoram? All right. Thank you, Percy. So, Percy has two questions for you. Okay. So, Percy's first question is from a previous guest. If you had to put a moment of courage in a coffee table book, which moment do you wish we had a picture of? And what would the story be?
You're talking about my courage?
Your moment of courage. If we took your moment of courage and put it in a coffee table book and had a picture of it, what would it be?
Well, there's several. One would be one that I told you about, and that is 19 out of 20 people said stick with the innovation, and I decided I'm going to go with trust. That's the most relevant, the most recent one. Another one would be the same week that we found that my wife and I found that we're pregnant, actually mostly her, was the same week we decided we're going to leave Israel and we're flying to the US with 10 suitcases, and we landed in San Francisco. By the way, my first lesson in living in America, working in America, was that if you have 10 this is before they were charging like $100 per suitcase. If you come with 10 suitcases, don't rent a compact car. So that would be another one. If we went back further, it would have to be my military service, which is not something that I can talk about.
Wow. Okay. So that would we're going to keep that one under wraps. But I can just see you and your wife with this little compact car and like 10 suitcases stacked on top going through the city. That's
No, there were suitcases on her.
wow.
Yes.
Lessons. Wow. So moments of courage. So Percy's second question for you, Yoram, is what is one question you would like to ask a future guest?
So that's how you got the first question. A future guest. That's a good question. What would I like to ask a future guest? You know what? I'm going to stick with item number 2 in the trust habit framework. What holds you back from being more trusted today? Pick one person. Tell me what's holding you back from being more trusted by that person. By the way, I have to say one thing, and this is in the research that I did for the Trust Premium book. That's the new book, the Trust Premium book. What I found, it's actually PricewaterhouseCoopers that did that study. They asked executives in companies, do your customers trust you? 87% said yes. Then they went and asked the customers. We're talking more than 1,500 customers. Do you trust that company? 30% said yes. That's a 57% gap. So one thing that I will tell leaders, oh, by the way, and that goes back to what you said before, what you asked before, what's advice? Don't assume that you're trusted. You know, I remember once talking to a CEO of a company, and there are three other VPs at the end of the table. So this was a Zoom call. The CEO was at the top of the table. 3 VPs were closer to me, to the camera. And I asked the CEO, do you feel that you're trusted by your top leadership team? The CEO says, of course I am. 3 VPs rolled their eyes.
Wow.
So don't assume that you're being trusted. Don't assume that you're being trusted. You're probably being trusted less than you think you are. And the question to you is, what do you think is holding you back from being as trusted as you want to be by that person?
That's a great question. Some future guest is going to have a good one on that one, Yoram. Thank you. Wow. Okay, the book is The Trust Premium, How to Attract Loyal Customers Who Want to Pay More. And Yoram, how do our listeners find you and your book and learn more about the work that you're doing?
They don't. I'm in Langley at the CIA headquarters. You can't get in there.
Okay,
first of all, my name is my name is Yoram Solomon, as you can see in the bottom. And if you go yoramsolomon.com, you will find me. The name of the book is the book of, Trust premium book. Yes, the other book is the Book of Trust. But if you find yoramsolomon.com, you're going to find everything. You're going to find my books on Amazon or anywhere else. And of course, there's the Trust Show podcast.
Yes, the Trust Show podcast. Fantastic. Well, Yoram, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you so much.
I enjoyed the conversation. It was great to be with you, Heather.
Well, until next time, keep saying I'm in to creativity, bold thinking, transformational growth, and meaningful conversations. May you be wildly creative in your life and leadership. I'll see you soon.